Hey guys, welcome to the episode, and this is the one we're finally going to cover, the tuning process. So within 3 weeks of buying this thing initially, I threw on the basics, I threw on the cold air intake, and a proper 3-inch turbo back exhaust, not a cat back one. They do just about nothing. Set of R8 coil packs. I was running just standard plugs originally, and as you saw in that other episode, we did a big front mount intercooler. Cleaned the valves up properly, and in terms of performance-y bolt-on stuff, that's all we did, and that's the beauty of this platform. There's very, very few things you need to do to get some really good results. So the tuner that I originally went with was Redline Tuning in G-Bung, Brisbane, Australia. Same reasonable over the phone, went in for a tune. Following that, he then proceeded to do his own custom stage 2 tune, which I told him to do, and straight away he ran into a few problems. 3 things he highlighted. He wasn't making the target boost he wanted to. It were maxed out at about 16. He also noted that in the upper revs, the ECU was pulling a bit of timing, so there was a little bit of knock being registered. Nothing dangerous, only a couple of degrees. And he was also not completely convinced that the clutch wasn't slipping, which we later found out was as well. So not long after that, that tuner actually went out of business. Turns out he ripped off a heap of customers. In his defense, everything he said to me and everything he did to me was authentic. All 3 issues that he raised with me were genuine. So following that, we went for 1-step colder plugs, BKR 7s. Stop any of that ignition timing being pulled. They just give a better burn with higher boost pressures and more fuel. The clutch and the flywheel, you just saw there was a whole episode on replacing that with a heavy duty one. The underboosting issue, I suspected turbo at the start. In the end, it just turned out to be the wastegate actuator wasn't adjusted very well. When the engine was out, I put the gauge and the compressor on it, and it was actually starting to crack the wastegate at only 4 or 5 PSI, and they should be about 9. First, you need a vacuum and sensitive fuel pressure gauge. No one that goes to 40 PSI, one goes to like 15. Compressor hooked up to an air supply. Running a tube from the wastegate to a T intersection. One goes to the gauge, the other goes to the compressor, so we can apply compressed air into the wastegate and see at what point the wastegate actually cracks. Firstly, if you pump a couple of PSI into it, just a little, it should maintain that pressure. So that shows you that the diaphragm isn't actually leaking. Oh, bit much. Very much open there. You can see it slowly closes by itself. And right there, we're at 3 PSI. Way too low. So we adjust it by this nut here. This nut on the wastegate actuator. Very hard to get your hands on. So turning it clockwise will increase the pressure the wastegate cracks at. Hopefully you can see the gauge and the wastegate here. So right now we're right on 7 and it's just starting to crack. So once you're happy with where it's opening at, there's a locking nut that screws down onto the adjuster. Torque that up, and then there's a circlip that goes over them both. As soon as I fixed that and got it back on the road, boom, it made 22, 23 PSI boost, fine. So after fixing all that stuff, it drove great. It made 23 PSI boost, it had heaps of power, EGT stayed cool. I approached a couple of other shops to give it a run up and just check the logs, and none of them had any interest in looking at it unless I was going to hand over like $1,500 for a new tune. So I drove it for the next 2 years and it gave me no issues whatsoever. It's as good as ever. Recently though, there's been a shop in Brisbane open called Supreme Performance. They do sort of Volkswagen Audi tuning. I reached out to them, the owner's called Brock, and he said, yeah, bring it down, we'll give it a run up, we'll check the logs, we'll see how it goes. So tomorrow, that's what's happening. So their shop is epic. They've got a brand new Pro hub dyno, so it's a wheel hub dyno, which is a lot more accurate than the old roller style ones. So we strapped it down and away we went. So it made very healthy power. He noted a few things though. The boost control on it wasn't the best. It was a little bit surgy and you could definitely feel that while you're driving on the road. The other thing, it was running not lean, but the AFRs were a little bit higher, a little bit lower than what he would prefer in the very top end. Most surprisingly though, he said, there's heaps left in this setup. So I said, go for it. They then did their own Etuners custom stage 2. So the way that Etuners works is you have the tuner there in person like Brock, and as you're doing that, there's actually 3 engineers that you join via video conference with, and they're looking at and reviewing the logs and making constant updates to the file. Now with these old ECUs, these are technically all flash tunes, but unlike just your typical chip or flash tune, they make dozens and dozens and dozens of adjustments to the file. Flash it, check it on the dyno, flash it again until they're happy with it. All up, it took about 4 hours, and there was probably about 30 revisions to the file, and they got it absolutely perfect. It made great power, almost 190 kilowatts. That's a 260,000 kilometer 2 litre, original turbo and original pump. I don't think you could get any better. But enough about facts and figures. The big question is, how does it drive? Alright, today you are joining me on one of my favourite roads. The limit's 80 the whole way, and it's very quiet. I've been up here for about 20 minutes and I have not seen another car. And today, I'm actually going to try and show you how it drives after everything. It is a bit damp, so we can't go too crazy, and I'm a bit of an awkward driver. Very suited to a very grippy front end car that's very precise, such as the Golf. This hairpin's caught a lot of people out. That's about it. Absolutely no complaints. Nothing gets hot. Temperatures stay good. EGTs never go above about 7.5, 750. Works like a charm, and you can do that just constantly. It never bats an eyelid, which is exactly the way I wanted it to be.